Thanks very much. While Hillary's big wins in Texas and Ohio have some business people concerned, Clinton has recently come down hard on NAFTA, even making changes, even suggesting she would make changes to the trade deal.
So for the businesses that are worried, is there reason to be concerned? Let's throw that question out to our Fox panel. Quentin Hardy, Silicon Valley Bureau Chief for Forbes. Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof. We have Mike Norman, host of the Biz Radio Network, and Joran Brook of the Ayn Rand Institute. And joining us for the first time, at least on our hour, is Dave Kansas, president of BuyLife.com.
Man.
Good to have you all. Quentin, let's start with you out there in the satellite offices on the West Coast. Do businesses have a reason to worry here? She talked very negatively about NAFTA. What do you think?
Well, she talked negatively to win Ohio, of course, but, you know, neither Obama nor Clinton is really going to get out of NAFTA. What the Democrats are going to do is say there should be more enforcement around employment and working conditions and pollution. More countries that are polluting or violating other kinds of laws should have their feet held to the fire in the context of NAFTA. That's all.
And Dave Kansas, you had Obama's aide going to the Canadians saying, hey, look, you know, don't take what happens in Ohio seriously. What happens in Ohio stays in Ohio. Doesn't follow me to the White House.
No, I think that's true. You got to look at who's going to be around Hillary if she gets in the White House, for instance. It's going to probably be a lot of the same people who orchestrated NAFTA in the first place, people who worked for her husband's administration. So I think it's something to win Ohio. I don't think it's something to get too excited about. I would be really surprised if she did anything radical to try to unravel NAFTA. I mean, Canada and Mexico are friends. We've got enough problems with the enemies.
We need their oil anyway.
Why start problems with the friends?
Yeah, particularly with the Canadians, with we've got the oil up there in the north. So what do you think, Joran? And keeping in mind that a lot of Wall Street names like the big boys at Goldman Sachs and John Mack are supporting Hillary Clinton.
I think there is reason to be worried, not because of this particular win by Hillary, but just the general populist trend in the country, which is there's a growing tendency to be anti-trade, to be more isolationist in terms of trade, to worry about losing jobs. I think there's a real, reason to worry for the future, no matter who wins, in terms of the future of free trade, which is so vital for the economy of the United States.
But, Peter, my old boss at the Wall Street Journal used to say it's the fool's gold of politics, protectionism. It glitters very bright, but once people really examine it and see, gee, I'd have to give up my Toyota, my Sony, all of the other stuff that I get from abroad, they turn tide on that.
People are going to have to give that up anyway because we're not going to be able to afford to import it anymore. The real problem is not that we have to worry about the Democrats. We have to worry about the Republicans, too. I mean, look at what this administration is doing to business.
On trade.
Look at what the Fed is doing to our money. And this is all happening.
Stay on trade for the moment.
But what do we trade? We trade money. And if they debase the value of the dollar, why is oil at $104 a barrel?
But trade agreements. Please, I'm begging you, Peter. But talk about trade agreements. We'll talk about dollars. Definitely.
We need free trade, certainly. But right now, since we don't trade exports for imports, we trade dollars for imports. And if the dollar is losing value, our ability to import declines.
Okay, let's bring it back to whether businesses should be concerned about the policies so far expressed by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, for that matter.
I think, well, Joran raises a good point in that we see this protectionist sentiment emerging on both sides of the aisle in Congress. However, I think it's more pandering than anything else. I don't think, and, I think Steve Forbes is right in this. I mean, to go in there and unravel, look, exports is the only thing keeping us out of a recession right now. Anyone with half a brain is going to look at that, and she's certainly going to have economic advisors who are going to tell her if you take away the exports, and our trade, we're in deep, we have deep problems.
So you're on very quickly. The point is that this is a lot of rhetoric on the campaign trail. Doesn't amount to much more than that.
Well, it's certainly rhetoric, but I fear that it turns into real policies down the road. It's both on the Republican and on the Democratic side. And if we go into deep recession and fears mount, there is the risk of populism, of a populist kind of agenda.
Always that risk, no doubt. We thank you all. Well, troubled bond insurer Ambac. More is they're actually blaming us, America, for mismanaging our energy and economy.
President Bush is challenging Americans to do something about OPEC's decision. Listen in.
America's got to change its habits. We got to get off oil. And the reason why is, first, dependency on oil presents a real challenge to our economy.
And he's been saying that for quite some time. But as OPEC thumbs its nose at America, is the cartel digging its own grave?
Let's toss that question to our Fox panel. David, What do you think of what the president is saying compared to what OPEC has done?
Well, I think the president's right that we need to get away from the oil industry, the OPEC in particular, and prices at these levels do sow the seeds for OPEC's own kind of destruction. At this price level, tar sands are very attractive. Alternative energy gets very attractive. You leave it at this level long enough, people will invest the money required that could obviate the importance of OPEC as a cartel. So I think OPEC's making a big mistake. They should be trying to drive prices down right here rather than trying to keep them up above $100.
Yoron, go ahead. Why?
Well, I think we give too much credit to OPEC. I think the real problem here is the dollar, is the value of the dollar. That's what's driving up much of this, and the political uncertainty that's out there with Chavez and so on. But cartels cheat. They always do. If we just left it up to OPEC, prices would drop in real terms. What the U.S. government should be focused on is not reducing consumption in the U.S., but strengthening the dollar.
Quentin, it is absolutely true that the history of keeping deals among OPEC is very poor. They make one announcement and the next day they violate it. So should we just wait for that to happen?
Oh, God, every time the price goes up, people treat OPEC like it's some kind of secret, powerful organization. You know, if these guys are so smart, could you please explain the success of countries like Iran, Nigeria, and Indonesia who are in OPEC? Look, they can't get anything together. I would rather personally be, I don't know, Ghana, Israel, the United States, Singapore, net oil importers who do something. OPEC cannot get it together. It is about the dollar being weak. It is basically, on our side, Bush is right. We haven't managed this well. Big gas-guzzling SUVs based on cheap oil were a bad idea.
Yeah, Peter, I mean, okay, so maybe we haven't managed it right, but we've certainly in the past year or two tried to turn things around, and it will eventually bite OPEC.
I don't think so. We're calling on OPEC to raise output because we claim oil prices are rising. They're not rising at all in real terms. OPEC is getting the same ounces of gold for a barrel of oil today that they got 8 years ago. All that's happening is paper currencies are losing value. And for us to debase our money and then expect OPEC to give us the same amount of oil for a depreciated currency is lunacy.
But Quentin makes a great point that I want to get back to, which is that, yes, they have a lot of cash because they happen to be floating on oil. They're lucky. So are the Rockefellers, but they don't create anything new the way we do. We create new businesses. Yeah, they don't. All they do is live off of our creativity.
Well, exactly, and their entire economy, is very one-dimensional, of course. It's based on oil. But look, OPEC also is responding to basic conditions. That when you talk about OPEC, and Quentin alluded to this, you have to really only talk about the Saudis. They are the price setters. They're setting prices where they want. Customers are lifting those prices, and then they adjust output accordingly. It's exactly what the Fed does with interest rates. They say, here's the Fed funds rate. Then they adjust reserves in the banking system to keep the rate there. The Saudis are the price-setting mechanism. They're seeing their prices hit, in the open market, which means there's real demand out there, and they're not going to cut when that's happening.
All right. We will come back to this many times, I'm sure. Coming up, we have some